This video is designed to help you write your visual analysis paper. The goal of this assignment is primarily to strengthen your visual analysis skills. In so doing, you will demonstrate your understanding of the major photographic movements of the first half of the 20th century, because all of the options for this assignment are pulled from the movements in the first half of this century. Finally, you're going to develop a thesis that's based on your own visual analysis of the photograph. So when you're doing this paper, I kind of want you to imagine that you're like visiting a museum and going into a photography exhibit. Based on what you've learned in this class, you should really be able to stylistically analyze any photograph, regardless of whether that particular photograph was one that we read about or discussed in class. And so in choosing an object here, you kind of imagine that, like, if you walked into a gallery, which of these 6 options would you want to go and stand in front of and spend a lot of time with? When we're talking about visual analysis here, it's really about the formal analysis or the stylistic analysis, the stylistic strategies, all of the things that we've been talking about all semester. These terms describe an argument that's based primarily on the photograph's stylistic choices rather than its subject matter or historical context. You will be thinking about those things, but the major building block of your assignment is, of your thesis rather, is the visual analysis. So there are 4 stages to this assignment. We'll just go through them here in the video. The first step is to choose your photograph. So I have a link within the assignment directions that has 6 different options for you to choose from. All of these options represent a photographic movement that we've studied since spring break. You should probably choose one that you like. Choose something you want to spend time with because you will be looking at it very closely. The next step is to do that visual analysis. You should plan to spend an uncomfortable amount of time looking at your photograph. I would set a timer for maybe like 30 minutes. You don't have to do it all at once, but just spend chunks of time just looking at your photograph and taking notes about what you see. Anything that you think of at all is relevant. You might print out that principles and elements of design page from earlier in the semester and think about the different elements on that list. You might sketch the object, just describe what you see, but take a lot of notes. When you are finished with the visual analysis, you should look at these notes and think about what are the things that you came back to over and over again, because that's going to be your evidence. So taking time to really look at the object and take notes while you're doing so will ensure that you have plenty of evidence to work with when you're writing. So now we're in the writing stage. The first thing you have to do is come up with a thesis. The way that you're going to do this is by looking at your notes and considering the visual elements that you return to repeatedly over your course of analyzing the object. Now think about why those visual things were so meaningful for you. Why did they captivate you? What does it do for the photograph? Might it suggest for its overall meaning? Along those lines, what stylistic period do you think this photograph belongs with? How do the visual elements that you identified as being important relate to the stylistic movement that we've been discussing over the last few weeks since spring break? Now, using your notes as a database, consider how those visual elements can be an argument. So, for example, if we're looking at this photograph here by Ansel Adams, good use of visual evidence here would be something like the repetitive lines of the trees create a gridded pattern across the image. So here, notice that there is stylistic analysis, right? Lines. And then you're saying what it does. It creates a gridded pattern. That is the type of evidence that should appear in your body paragraphs. What would be less effective is just to say there are lines and trees. Yes, there are. But what are they doing? And how are you going to use that evidence to make an argument? So what I have here is just like copying what's in the assignment in terms of the structure of your rough draft. It's a 5-paragraph essay. Your thesis is going to summarize your argument about the photograph in terms of its stylistic period and how that relates to your identification of its major visual elements. Your first body paragraph is really going to focus on those formal elements. So describe what are the most important parts of the photograph. Your topic sentence is going to identify those major stylistic strategies that you think are most important. In the next body paragraph, you're going to use your identification of the visual strategies to align it with a particular stylistic movement. Your topic sentence should link the strategies of the previous paragraph explicitly to the style you think this photograph demonstrates. Then your third body paragraph is going to be a comparison. So you are going to develop a topic sentence in which you compare your photograph with an object that we talked about in class. This is how you're going to prove your claims that your visual analysis is connecting it to a particular style. And then you'll end with a conclusion that just summarizes your basic arguments. So logistically, this is going to be 500 to 700 words. I want you to include an image of your chosen photograph at the end of the essay. And then I also want you just to know I'm going to grade it using the same rubric I've been using all semester, which you're pretty familiar with at this point. The final copy is due a week after the rough draft. Take my feedback to the heart. Most of you are going to need some significant revisions. Also remember to submit on time because late papers you lose 5 points per day. One thing that students often ask me about is passive voice. Usually I take off like 3 points if you're using passive voice, and here's just an example of it. So again, thinking about that Ansel Adams photograph earlier. Passive voice is when you take a strong verb like to use here, and you modify it with to be, so is used. And so a passive sentence would be geometric patterning is used. An active construction puts the artist in the active place. So here the artist is Adams. And so you'd say Adams uses geometric patterning. If you have any questions, please do reach out. We can talk on the phone, we can Zoom, send me a thesis idea. I'm really excited to talk with you about these photographs and see what you think about them. Anyway, so that's it. Good luck.